He wishes to share.
Right. Kulkarni sir, do you have any PPT to show? Hello sir, do you have any PowerPoint presentation?
No, sorry, I don't have.
Okay, that's fine. We're just inquiring. If you have, then we can just, kind of
Yes,
share that with us and we can operate that from our own end. Okay.
yes.
Yeah. So we are ready to go live and we are ready to start the program. Uh, as the head of the Department of English of Pemraj Sarda College, let me welcome all the viewers, my esteemed
Ma'am?
guest speaker. Sorry,
Yes, ma'am, you are now visible.
am I visible or not?
Yes, ma'am, you are visible now.
Okay, and am I audible also?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay, fine. So I'll just repeat that. So I say that I would like to welcome today's guest speaker, Dr. Anand Kulkarni. He would be talking about new developments in critical theories. This is going to be the last lecture in the online lecture series, which is initiated by the Department of English, Pemraj Sarda College. It's called Reflections. So, welcome, sir, to this online series. We are going live on YouTube as well, and now I would like to request my colleague, Mrunmay Gune ma'am, to introduce Dr. Anand Kulkarni. Mrunmay, please.
Thank you, ma'am. It's an honor to introduce you, and second time's a charm as well. I'd like to introduce Dr. Kulkarni, sir. Dr. Anand Kulkarni is a distinguished academician residing in Narayangau, Pune, currently holding the dual role of principal and head of the Department of English at Arts, Commerce and Science College in Narayangau, Pune. He is also the chairman of the Board of Studies in English at Savitribai Phule Pune University, Pune. With an extensive teaching career spanning 27 years at both undergraduate and postgraduate levels, Dr. Kulkarni has left an indelible mark on the academic landscape. He has delivered over 200 lectures as a resource person, contributing significantly to the academic discourse. His expertise as a recognized research guide at Savitri Bai Phule Pune University for PhD in English is reflected in the successful guidance of numerous research scholars. Dr. Kulkarni's academic contribution extend to the realm of literature, where he has edited 7 books prescribed for undergraduate courses at Savitribai Phule Pune University. Additionally, he has authored 3 books showcasing his expertise in literary theory and modern Western drama. As he is also an honorary member of various boards of studies in English in Maharashtra. Dr. Kulkarni continues to play a pivotal role in shaping the academic landscapes. His multifaceted contribution, spanning teaching, research, and administrative roles, highlights his dedication and impact in the field of English literature and education. I welcome you once again, sir.
Thank you.
Over to you, ma'am. Dixon, ma'am, you are not audible. Ma'am?
Oh, I'm sorry, my mic was not on. I was just saying, sir, that you can now proceed with your lecture and we can save 10 minutes towards the end of your lecture for a question and answer session.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you, sir.
I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Yes. Uh, Thanks to the Department of English, especially my special regards to Dr. Dikshit Madam for having thought of inviting me for this kind of interaction with students on the topic which is very close to my heart. Thanks to Dr. Dikshit Madam in the first place, to the Department of English of Pemraj Sarda College, Ahmednagar, and thanks are also due to the faculty of Department of English, other teachers who have contributed, faculty who have contributed towards this kind of interaction. Thanks to all of you. With this note of thankfulness, I think we should move on to the topic that I'm supposed to deal with, the topic that is given to me is, of course, that was my choice. That is new developments in critical theories. I was thinking of discussing on a few things that have entered and very strongly influenced the trajectory of critical theories in 21st century. For example, there is something like geopolitics, which has acquired a pivotal role in critical theory these days. Another very important area that has made deep inroads into critical theory is space and time. Still more, there are other areas like diaspora criticism, which has branched off into different directions. Also, there are things like chaos theory and complexity theory and criticism, which I would like to discuss on. There are other issues which are equally important. So, mine is not going to be a meta perspective on literary criticism. So, that is the first thing which I would like to create clear at the very outset. This is a kind of contemplation, a loud thinking on my part as to what literary criticism so far, if you ever call it to be, or if you ever dare to call it to be literary criticism, has resulted into or has uh, reformed itself into an entirely different kind of phenomenon as far as its multidisciplinary nature and plurality is concerned. So, not that criticism is limited to, or critical theory is limited to, uh, these specified fields that I just enumerated. There are other influences also. For example, post-structuralism and postmodernism and the recent phase of feminism, they have also branched off into different areas. For example, there is something like cultural studies, which has emerged as a very powerful critical mode of doing away with or dealing with numerous issues related to arts in general and literature in particular. There is something like trauma studies, which is also equally important. Eco-criticism has also taken the primary seat of intellectual discourse in 21st century. So, broadly speaking, there are n number of areas, several areas or several fields which have influenced and in some way adopted, and I won't use the word appropriated, but they have adopted the basic foundational seat of literary judgment and have driven or steered away from its original orientation towards different orientations. That we have to keep in mind. Now, among all these plural and multiplying areas which have their influence on criticism or critical theory, I think I should prefer to talk on how chaos theory and complexity theory have some connection with criticism or critical theory. Now, I am not the first to deal with this. In the first place, I would like to make it quite clear to you. Several critics have done, many critics have come out with sharp criticism of this kind of multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary kind of approach, especially related to chaos theory and critical theory. Many of them have rejected the association, many of them have forcefully supported and elaborated. And that I think is quite a sign of a very fair kind of intellectual discourse, which is unfortunately and sorrily absent these days, especially in a country like India. That I should put on record. Now, chaos theory has, as the word chaos represents, or stands for, represents is a critical term in In fact, I would use a word, a simple word with less nuance, like it stands for or it means lack of order or disorder. Now, chaos theory has something to do with mathematics. In fact, it had its origins in mathematics, and this theory came out with the idea that there are two things when measurement comes. One is randomness, another is determinacy. So this determinateness or determinacy on one hand and randomness on the other hand are two opposite poles which we all know. But chaos theory, as it stands for or as it means, it refers to the lack of order, and this lack of order comes out of this binary opposition, this binary association between randomness and determinacy, that we are intent on and we insist on eliciting, drawing measurements which are determined, or the measurements which can be determined. By that I mean measurements which are predetermined and measurements which are likely to be determined. So we determine certain things, certain notions. Let us extend this from mathematics to other areas of our concern, because determination would come in statistical details in mathematics. But in social sciences, it will come into notional form. That is, there will be some ideas, some issues, views, concepts. So it will be more notional when it comes to literary or social or political discourses. So, chaos theory is based on or draws its power base from this idea that there is always a duality present in any kind of phenomenon, in any kind of system for that matter. Any system has to have these two operating elements in it, one that is randomness and another that is determinacy. That is, we are able to determine, and there are certain things which we are not able to determine. There is always already a point of indeterminacy, a point of randomness present in any system for that matter. That is what chaos theorists have always upheld. They have always believed and have come out with uh, some well researched explanation that any system for that matter, take for example a system like weather, in which you will understand we can forecast or predict weather, but any minor mistake in weather would probably create all kinds of problems. Now there is something like butterfly effect. Some of you must have gone through when it comes to chaos theory. There was a paper which was presented by, now I do not exactly remember the scholar who had presented this paper way back some in 70s probably. He presented this paper by the title, by the same title as to, if the butterfly flaps its wings, butterfly is so tiny, we all know, and it is not going to have any kind of effect even to a person who is very close to the butterfly. If you keep the butterfly on your thumb or on your palm and the butterfly flaps its wings, there is less possibility that it is going to create any kind of reverberation or any kind of vibration, any kind of effect for that matter. But then chaos theorists believe that even the smallest development in the system would create all kinds of issues in system, will come out with a different result, and will take an entirely new course of development. Now I'll come to how this is applicable or in some way associated with critical theory. This is about chaos theory. I'll not go into the details because this would take us to some notional discussions, which I don't have right now time to go into, but then, and this is virtual platform, so I won't be able to explain these things in detail. A passing reference to it probably will help you. There is something like complexity theory, which is an advanced and sophisticated version of chaos theory. complexity theory believes that any system always reorganizes itself. So there is an element of self-organization which is always present into any kind of system for that matter. Every system in the world reorganizes itself on its own. That there is something called self-organization, and this self-organization is evident when a system is on the verge of distinction, extinction, on the verge of disappearance, on the verge of complete destruction. It and again this comes from natural science. All these theories are related to natural sciences. Some of them are related to mathematics, others are related to mathematics and computation, and to some biological sciences as well. But then these theories help us understand that even physical phenomenon in this world, in this world or in this universe, are not determinable, and not determinable in the sense in which ontologically or from the empirical point of view they used to be there, earlier. We all know that two of the strong and very dominant modes of intellectual discourses have existed in the Western culture. One we all know that has turned out to be epistemological, concerning itself with all kinds of theoretical abstractions. The other one is, of course, the empirical study, which got its momentum mostly in the 18th and 19th century, and more so towards the end of the 19th century. We all know how positivism took over, empiricism became very important, and empirical details were important. So scientific inquiry, for that matter, which believed in external evidences of everything in terms of clinical pathological understanding. On the other hand, we have abstractions both on the level of concepts and ideas and on the level of feelings and experiences. Well, philosophy took over abstractions, theoretical abstractions. Literature and all other arts took over feelings and sentiments and experiences. So we have these two very dominant intellectual discourses. And what chaos theory did was that it came out with this idea that nothing in the world can be accurately and precisely and very exactly determined. There are many things, very minor, of course, not even uh, not even uh, evident or palpable, tangible, which we can touch or can understand, feel, which are beyond our sensory perceptions. But they are there, and they have their own impact on the functioning of the entire system. So that has given rise to this idea that there is something called indeterminacy, which is always present in any of the system for that matter. Now, this has something to do with the idea of the 16th and 17th century, 18th century Western epistemology or philosophical thinking. I hope this is not becoming taxing with you. This is fine, no?
Yes, sir, very much fine. That's not a problem. Anyway, we are talking about theoretical issues, so
Yeah, yeah.
students will have to bear with some kind of abstraction, some level of
Thank you.
abstraction.
Yeah,
So please don't
I
worry
am
about
so much taken by this fear. I do not know whether I would be able to reach out to
that.
students.
No,
But
no.
anyway, I'm sorry for this. We have to go for these kinds of things because recent theories have recent theories have gone to the extreme level of theoretical abstractions. This is one of them, the one that we are right now discussing. So we have I was talking about 17th and 18th, especially 18th and 19th century development in Western intellectual discourse, especially philosophical discourse, which was more concerned with the theoretical abstractions, less concerned with the physical, what you call biological or external evidences, while science, on the other hand, was in terms of positivism or in terms of empiricism afterwards, was more concerned with the idea of pathological clinical exploration. Now that what chaos theory and complexity theory does is that situates itself, it sits between these two intellectual discourses. It has something to do with, or it takes a handful of philosophical abstraction in itself and something from natural sciences, which have their telescope which is fit outside the human mind, outside the human consciousness, and always outward looking and always outward observing, and inwardly observing philosophy and arts. So there is a kind of mix, a kind of combination. I do not know how far this is tenable, because this is in some way or the other a very rough kind of mix. But for our uh, convenience and tentative understanding, I think this works. So we shall see complexity theory sits between these two, that there is this element of indeterminacy. However accurate our measurements are, however precise and exact our machines are, and however perfectly labeled and perfectly functioning our systems are, there is every chance that unknowingly or unwittingly, system runs in a different way, gets disoriented or misoriented, or comes out with different results, and not that each time we come out with the same results. This is because of this complexity issue. This is because of this indeterminacy which is always already there. This is because of uh, any system getting to its extreme position, extreme state, not position, extreme state, where it loses its formal earlier form and re-emerges, resurfaces in different form, different formation. So that there is always a kind of informedness and reformation. There is always this reformation going on, which we cannot avoid. I remember one of the books in which I had read this example. This would probably help students and me also to explain this idea much better. We consider that there are black holes. Some of you must have heard this, something about this. Black holes are such celestial bodies, such bodies which are present in the space, which are considered to have the highest possible gravity, and anything that goes into it loses itself. Even the light doesn't pass through black holes. Now, one of the theorists who wanted to relate cultural theory with complexity theory gave this example, and he he argued that there is every possibility that our galaxy, our universe, is itself a kind of black hole. Now, this is something which changes the entire perspective. We do not know because we haven't crossed our universe. We haven't crossed the limits and boundaries of our galaxy, and there is very least possibility of any of us crossing this boundary of the universe in any near future, next 10,000 years probably, or 20,000 years, or millions of years. There is no chance of us standing outside of our gallery and looking at it from the third point of view. This takes us to relativity theory of Albert Einstein. Anyway, I'll not go to that. This example probably helps us to understand that we are the part of the system, and that the system which we would like to cross is itself made of the same elements which we would like to overcome. So there is no getting out of all these things. We have to live with LIV. We have to live with this kind of system, and that system regenerates, reformulates itself, and that this is applicable in some way or the other, to what you call the cultural theory, cultural politics, cultural discourse that we are interested, or that we are living with, would like to study, say for that matter. So this is what I would like to, as far as these two terms are concerned, chaos theory and complexity theory. are concerned would like to bring to your notice. Now, what this has to do with critical theory would be a very pertinent and sensible question that would come to your mind. What this has to do with what we have been so far talking about. The idea is that in some way or the other, there are two things which have turned out to be very important in the entire Western discourse. And I'm sorry I'm using these words like Western and all that, because I believe that there are cultural specificities, there are geographical territorial specificities, and any study of this kind into a country like India or a continent like Asia would probably come out with different results. Uh, I am explaining these things to you only because I have gone through and studied in some way how complexity theory can have some association with critical theory. Now, what this has to do with post-colonial theories uh, or post-colonial world, third world for that matter, or the world in which we are living, would be a matter of serious research and would come out with very different results from what we would right now conjecture or simply guess. So, complexity theory has to do with two things as far as cultural theory is concerned, cultural discourse is concerned. One is the issue of identity, the other is the issue of free will. Now, identity has been divided into two units, two notional units. One is personal identity, another is collective identity. You call it individual identity or something like that as well. Now, personal identity is something which is based on certain ideas. For example, there is something like self assertion, self explanation, self expression, everything related to self. And then there is something like other, this binary which we are very much familiar with. But it doesn't fit this with the same nuances and subtlety into complexity theory and cultural theory. But anyway, for our convenience, I'm putting this way. So you have this personal identity and its attendant problem of free will. All of us would like to get free from the systems in which we live, civil societies, general societies, course of conduct, everything that is around us. And this idea of free will has its origins in the Enlightenment project that was very much influential in Europe for a very long period. It was only by the beginning of the 20th century, you shall see, that Enlightened period was so seriously challenged, and that it was understood that identity is fragmented, split. It's a fluid kind of concept, and that identity is not fixed. Then it went to the extent of subject, subject position. The later post-structuralists like Foucault and Barthes, and afterwards, or somewhere by the same time, Derrida and Edie and other feminist writers, theorists also came out with success was also in some way or the other responsible for this kind of idea that identity is not something which is fixed, not something which is unique, not something which is pure. Enlightenment assumed that there is a science, and it is this essence which needs to be protected and needs to be articulated. While this very idea that essence is there was challenged by the critical theorists in the 20th century, towards the end of 19th century and towards the beginning of 20th century. And it had its high period when post-structuralists and postmodernists came out with different announcements and explanations through their writings to the world. Now, This has something to do with the free will also. That is there anything that we can do on our own? Now, this has something to do with fate. If you go to the medieval period, you shall see that our fate and our fortune, even literature and art of this period, medieval period, was replete with this kind of suspicion, this kind of threat rather, that fortune, we cannot control our fortune, we cannot control our fate, we cannot shape our fate. And it was only with the humanistic movement, somewhere around 15th and 16th century, that man started gathering his own powers, realizing his energy, and coming out with a rational explanation increasingly afterwards, which took its form, which took the form of science afterwards. A kind of inquiry that was made into not just the physical phenomenon, but the consciousness of human being as well. So you shall see this idea of free will has something to do with the idea of emancipation, and at the same time the idea of not having control over our destiny, our fate, our fortune, or something like that. So between present and future, you know, this idea prevailed that we cannot control our future, we cannot control our destiny, and we cannot predict, and that there are forces larger than what we conceive or understand in the world in which we live, and these forces control us. Now, this was challenged by humanism in 16th, 17th century. Subsequently or sequentially, it was challenged by Enlightenment theorists. And but then the focus was not entirely changed. It was not entirely shifted. For example, essence was considered to be there, which Plato had earlier conceived to be there, some 2,500 years back, roughly. So essence was there. The only thing was this, that this essence could be realized through human efforts. That was what Enlightenment project was aiming at. That it believed that there is identity. We all have our own identities. The identities are solid, consolidated, fixed, unpolluted, unviolated, universal, unique, something of that sort. So, and that we are free to our own will. Some of you might have gone through existentialist ideas, and this issue of free will has been so elaborately dealt with or treated by the existentialist philosophers. I'll not go into those details, just a passing reference as to how free will has turned out to be. And it started very strongly with Friedrich Nietzsche, and it came down to other theorists like Sartre on one hand, Heidegger on the other hand. Even other theorists also dealt with how free will has any important role in human life. So identity and free will are the two things which connect complexity theory and cultural theory. Now, cultural theory deals with these two things: identity, which is considered to be traditionally, conventionally considered to be. Uh, Madam, I am supposed to speak for next 10-15 minutes.
Yes, sir. Sure.
Yeah, so that I'll complete. Uh,
If
these
you would
two,
like to take a few more minutes, then and that is not a problem at all.
yeah, yeah, thank you.
Don't be bothered about the time frame. Yeah.
Okay. No, but I'm bothered about students. I don't know how far they
Yeah.
would be getting
Yeah.
to these things. So the point is that these two uh, ideas are there which relate complexity theory with cultural theory. Now, cultural theorists, this is a broad term that I'm using, and I'm not right now uh, interested in naming the post-structuralists and postmodernists and all those things. That will take us into critical theory per se, which I am right now not interested in. I would like to see what are the meeting points where complexity, chaos and complexity theory and cultural theory can come to. So self-realization is considered to be an important part of the Western discourse, from Plato downward to the 1940s, 50s. Most of the European Western philosophers, Western theorists, artists have emphasized this notion of self-realization. And all arts, for that matter, were either understood to be the means through which self-realization could be achieved, or the end where the self-realization could be achieved. So either arts have been considered to be means or considered to be ends, but both ways self-realization has turned out to be a common point of pursuit for philosophers in many ways. This will take us to another idea of how cultural theorists have challenged the unique, pure, unviolated, unpolluted, fixed notion of identity and free will. For example, some of you must have gone through or must have read that Roland Barthes challenged the idea of the writer or the author. Now, this was challenging the very subject position, in some way, and in a larger context, challenging the very conception that there is something that is fixed, something that is institutionalized, and something that not only creates but authenticates and valorizes, gives priority to something. For example, the author is the one who is the creator, the source, the creator, the inspiration, the semi-god, the demigod, whatever you call him or her to be. Also the one who gives out the, the certificate of a specific meaning, and also authenticates that the text belongs to him or her. So this is how the cultural theorists have challenged the notions of subject position. Subject position is a word which I have derived from Mr. Foucault. But you shall see that most of these cultural theorists have dealt with or have treated this as something which is fragmented, something which is broken, something which is porous, something which is amalgamated, something which is not in any way universal and unique, something which has a very retrogressive kind of movement also, not just progressive kind of movement. That is what it is all about. Same is the case with language, you shall see. Deleuze was, say, for example, another theorist, cultural theorist who is very prominent in this context, argued that we all are desiring machines. Now this idea of desiring machine, that was, if I'm not wrong, that was in Antidippus that he came out with this idea of desiring machines. And we are desiring machines because we are repressed. And there is no system which would like to articulate us. Systems in the existing and functioning systems would like to protect our repression, our our consciousness repressed, because consciousness repressed conforms to the established norms and ideas. So you shall see that we have always lived or preferred to live into social frames, into ethics and moral concerns and moral strictures and all those things. So we have certain frames through which we would like to live. These frames are important because these frames always help to repress the consciousness of the human being, and in turn, in result, conforms them to the established notions of a better, sophisticated, civilized life. I think Foucault came out with some very interesting and insightful explanations, illustrations, I would rather say, that is with examples of how mad people were treated and how homosexuals were treated because of this idea of a repression. And repressed personality is far easier for the authorities to deal with. That is something that we have to keep in mind. That is why, and and you shall see that repressions are considered to be unpredictable. This element of unpredictability is also glorified because it again helps, assists in some way or in many different ways to the authorities to continue its rule over human beings. Uh, Another feminist, Lucy Gary, has come out with the idea of how woman's identity has been destroyed or a woman's identity has been leveled down. She uses deconstructive framework to interpret this identity and free will of a woman. In short, we shall see that personal identity and free will are the two, for our present consideration. Of course, there can be many more different notions and ideas of this sort which can work as a bridge between chaos theory, complexity theory, and cultural theory. But for my present consideration, I have selected these two, identity and free will, and I have focused more on identity because that has turned out to be an important preoccupation with most of the writers, theorists, critics, intellectuals, and not necessarily literary, non-literary also. Because by the time we are living in 21st century, I suppose we do not believe in uh, stupid ideas like purity and decence and universality and all those things. We understand that identities are split, fragmented, plural, and that there is nothing like a singularity that exists, and that the fluidity is always there, that our life is porous, that indeterminacy is always already present, and that systems have this ability, have this inherent capacity to repress and reorganize the things towards their interests. And that is where I think cultural theorists have a lot more to do, a lot more to explore. Thank you. I hope I have been able in some way to communicate what I think about these two things. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Surely, surely. Why not? So, shall we move on to the Q&A session if students have
Yeah, yeah,
some
please.
questions to ask? Mrunmay, would you like to take over for the Q&A session?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I would like to ask a
Sir,
question, but keep me towards the end in the list. Yeah. Okay.
mm, yes, ma'am. Sir, I'll read out the questions to you, and then you may
Yeah.
answer. So the first question is students are asking is why do you think there is a need for conflict theory?
Complexity theory. This
Conflict theory. I mean, why there
conflict
is
theory.
this need? Yes, sir.
Uh, I didn't get to your question. What do you mean by conflict? I was talking about complexity.
Sir, the student might be confused with the terms. There might be a typographical error. So,
Fine,
why there
fine.
is a need
Anyway,
of this emerging theory?
that is fine. Okay, I got it. Thank you. This is a wonderful question, and thanks anyway. There is a need of this kind because we should move on. That is what I think. We should not get stuck with the established notions and
Next
ideas.
with the
For example,
establishment.
there is some echoing sound, no? Fine. Okay. So the point is that criticism, I being a student of criticism, uh, I have watched over the last 20, 25 years that criticism has moved too far away from what it was earlier. in my personal experience is I started with new criticism, and I have come to this idea from new criticism over to this chaos theory or complexity theory or anything of this kind, because uh, arts in general and literature in particular, and also critical theories in particular, should explore different fields and should explore the associations of itself with other fields, because we cannot limit ourselves and restrict ourselves and remain within our shell. It is important that certain influences should come to us. That is why I earlier said ki piety is a fallacious notion, that anything like piousness is there, it's something that is consolidated, structured, very pure kind of and very essential kind of identity or something of that sort. One of the notions that I'm referring to, you shall see, is something which is unfounded and that we need to explore. One very important reason why we should study these kinds of new areas is this, that we should move on. A very simple answer that we can go for. Another is that there are many insights that we garner. Otherwise, it is very difficult for us to understand. For example, had we ever thought of the idea that the author can be dead? You know, for example, if Marx had not come out with a multidisciplinary kind of, all the critical theorists, cultural theorists have been multidisciplinary thinkers. What has happened with you and me, as a matter of fact, as students and teachers of belonging to a particular system, that we are people tied down to a specific discipline. We are domain specific people, which it is not. Life is not domain specific. Uh, life is a conglomeration of numerous influences. Not that something very specific works with us. There are several things which have been working, which are right now working over you and me, and we are not aware of them, but they are working with us. Now we have to understand how many forces and influences or ideas have been working with us. So for us to understand this, of course, you can take a stand from literature point of view. Say, for example, you can go for a narrative, a novel, a poem, and apply this kind of complexity theory, like how it self organizes itself, how where the text crumbles, collapses, and at the moment of its collapse, what do you call it to be an anticlimax? Say, for example, in any narrative or a dramatic composition, there is an anticlimax. Say, for example, that is a collapse of itself. So, do you mean to say that the text on its own reorganizes itself? Is there any possibility of this sort? And if it does, in what way it does? Is what I think is, we are not trained into this, but we need to go for this. That is what I think we should go for. So need is intellectual, need is social also, political, cultural also. Need is to realizing ourselves without self-realizing ourselves, because there is nothing like an entity, a fixed entity called self. Again, keeping in mind that view, we have to re-examine the systems in which we are living. And finally, should I tell you, or rather share with you, is this, that are we the part and parcel and inevitable, inseparable part of a system? Is there any chance, any scope, any window through which we can look out or come out and see outwardly how a system works? Or is it our fate that we are forever condemned to be within a system and still we are trying to cross over the system? That is it. That is what I think it is all about.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, Sakshi from SYBA class wants says, could you please briefly talk about the butterfly effect, which you mentioned in the lecture?
I remember, I exactly do not remember now, but I had read a book by the same title. Title again, I do not remember, but then the title was something like this, that if a butterfly flaps its wings from Texas it will create tornado in some other part. It will create tornado in Tokyo. It means that the smallest event, which is not even recognizable, and if it works unwittingly, unknowingly to all of us, can have severe consequences over the functioning of a system. That is it. So this flaw is always inherent. This disorder is always inherent. Any system always tries to bring the things in order. That is it. Any system is an attempt to bring the things in order. Now, putting the things into order that means that there is a kind of repression. Well, it doesn't mean that we have to support disorder each time. Say, for example, we are discussing what disorder is, but we are discussing disorder in a very ordered manner. That is the way how we have to understand it. That is what the structuralists have argued about, isn't it? On the cognitive level, we have to figure out that there is something that is falling out of the system, and any system would not allow anything to fall out of its premises, would again like to bring it back to its earlier status. This always goes on. So there is a kind of, I was tempted to say this, but then I stopped doing that. But let me say it right now, that there is this kind of dialectic that always works. That would take us to Marxism. Right now, I'm not concerned with that, but that can be a very insightful kind of exploration when we think from Marx's point of view how this dialectic works. Small event having a very serious impact over the functioning of a system. That is what this butterfly effect is all about, to put it in a very simple way.
Right, sir. Well, I think the name itself suggests something curiosity within children to understand what
Yeah,
exactly the theory is like.
exactly. Yeah.
So the next question is from Avishkar Thakur, MA Part 1. He asks that does the AI affects the critical or cultural theories, and if yes, then in what ways does it affects the cultural theories?
AI falls out of the present purview of my discussion, by the way, but then because there is not a fixed structure that I have come out with, I would say AI affects in many different ways. One very important and severely impairing effect that AI can have on human beings is that we would lose the ability to think. And when you are dealing with critical theory, you have to be very critical. There is something called critical thinking, which our present system or systems do not allow us to go for. So I would put it this way, that artificial intelligence can have, because it is pre-qualified by the adjective called artificial, you know, there is nothing like humane. I would not use the word natural, because that would again take us to natural artificial kind of duality, which I would not like, I would not prefer. But then there is something like humanness that is there with all of us. And even though we copy each other, our copy is a different version. With artificial intelligence, we shall be having simply the copies, and the copies will be exact. Where this uh, human imperfection, which has long been disliked and long been prolonged, disallowed by the entire Western intellectual discourse. It was only with the beginning of the 20th century that imperfection was brought to the center and perfection was driven out. You know, so you shall see that this human imperfection is something which we will be missing, and I think it is this imperfection, the flawed state of all of us, that makes life so much interesting, so much varied, so much different. It is the difference that we shall be losing, I suppose, with artificial intelligence. And difference in every sense of the term, plurality in every sense of the term, the specificity of a particular expression. By expression, I do not mean simply verbal expression. Nature has its own expressions. We all have our own expressions. We have already been artificially expressing ourselves. You shall see artificial intelligence will take us away from our humanness, our differences, our varied opinions, ideas, cultures, and there will be a virtually common, copied kind of species living on the surface of the earth. Now, I do not know this is what we actually uh, dreamed for or imagined, or this is what actually we would like to see ourselves into. That is why Deleuze was very right in declaring, some 30, 40 years back that we are desiring machines. Artificial intelligence would take us to desiring machines. I'm not sure whether there would be desires as well, because machines hardly have desires. And because we have desires, we are human beings. That is something which we should
So
not
true.
forget. But these will be very serious effects over us. And the problem with all of us is that we cannot stop this. We have come to an extreme state where everything is likely to collapse into artificial intelligence. And if this complexity theory is right, there is every chance that at the point of this collapse, the system will reorganize itself and we will be having a different artificial intelligence. Who knows? That would be another consequential kind of thing in the future.
So true. Right, sir. Shall I read the next question?
Yeah.
Yes. Sir, Ronit Khanna from TYBA, he is asking that can you give an example of how a critical theory is referred in has different notions in Western and Indian context?
Critical theory in Indian context has been post-colonial in every sense of the term, let me tell you, because critical theory had its origins in Nietzsche, in Marx, in Darwin, in some of the troubleshooters, troublemakers, in fact. These were the troublemakers in the Western intellectual discourse. With Indian context, you shall see critical theories have resurfaced on the background of coloniality. We have not been able to sufficiently uh, we have not been able to surmount or take over this colonial hangover. We have not been able to raise ourselves out of this. We haven't outgrown this element of coloniality, and that is understandable, of course, because colonial experience has reshuffled, has reorganized, reformed many more things with all of us. So that element of having lost something which we suppose we had, again, cultural theorists will help us understand that we do not have any identity in its pristine pure form. Identity is always identities, it is always in plural multiple form, so there cannot be a fixed identity. But this identity of being the colonized people is something which we have not been able to cast away from. We have not been able to disown it. So I think critical theory, if there is any connection between critical theory and Indian intellectuals, it is mostly uh, influenced by this coloniality. Coloniality as a condition, colonialism as a theory. And that is why there is something like post-colonial discourse, and this post-colonial discourse has largely been Marxist, a combination of Marxist, deconstructivist, structuralist, post-structuralist, postmodernist, cultural study, a mix of all this. Subalternity is there, and all those things that we have to take into account. So, if there is any
Right.
kind of connection, it is this.
Right, sir. Madhuri ma'am, you wanted to ask a question?
So yes, I have been listening to the answers given by Dr. Kulkarni. And I should say that, sir, you have made a very meaningful and nice comment when you said that we are very domain specific people and we don't have any touch of multidisciplinarity. Now, that is very true about the academic community in general, but it is even truer in case of the student community. I would like to base my question in this observation, which is provided by you, and ask you what are the ways in which the students may take interest in theory in general, or how should they make meaning of theory? I mean, they do take experiences, they live, and they are keen observers too, but they lack that kind of connection of analyzing their experiences. So, would you like to say something about this to make it a little easier for these students to take more interest in theory?
Yeah. Very true. Thank you, madam. Thank you in the first place for providing this kind of platform to interact. I'm sorry because I have to work as an administrator, unfortunately or fortunately.
Yes.
Uh, that takes me away from, systems work this way. This is what an example, an experience. Students might also be experiencing similar kind of thing at their own level.
Hmm.
But you shall see, I shall give a very concrete example that would probably help us. Uh, most of the students must have read because Indians always love Shakespeare and Wordsworth. We love
Yes.
Shakespeare, we love Wordsworth. Take one example of Wordsworth. I'm talking about how theory can help us understand things differently. And this would serve as an example. Wordsworth wrote a very famous, world known famous poem, and Indians often love it for reasons not known to me at least. But then we often love this poem called Daffodils. Wordsworth wrote Daffodils, and it is generally argued, we Indians have this habit of providing the pretext to the text, explaining what the text is all about, and then the teacher has no very meaningful and specific role to play because already the gist is provided, and then the text means for stands for these things. So there are some questions and exercises, and then we appear in the exam, right there, answers to the questions. We assess them for whatever reasons, we give marks to them, and that is how it works. Now, the very purpose of providing these literary texts or pieces to students is to make them know and think differently. Critical thinking is thinking differently, and thinking differently is challenging the existing notions, the existing ideas. For example, Daffodils is all about the meeting of culture and nature. So nature dominates and culture is dominated, and that the poet would like to go into the nature and would like to live a very free, happy, peaceful life. That is what the general bottom line argument must be there, with the poem. Now, do not you think that the poem works in a topsy-turvy manner? For example, it begins in search of company and it ends with solitude. If you come towards the end of the text, you will understand that the poet finally reclines in a mood of solitude. So, where the poem started, the poem ends. The poem started with, I wandered lonely as a cloud. This loneliness that is there in the very opening line matches with the solitude towards the end of the poem. Now, my simple question is, where is this happiness? If at all the poet is after it, if at all, and Mr. Wordsworth was very, very Jose for us. He was very articulate about how this poem is a nature poem, and it is a poem which liberates and delivers all of us from the mundane, uh, quotidian kind of what you call the physical material world into a different romanticized world. Even the romanticizing idea of happiness, which is personified throughout the poem through the daffodils, 10,000 saw I at a glance. That is how the line runs. You shall see this 10,000 is a number which refers to the numberlessness, that there are so many numbers, and these so many numbers represent the plenitude the happiness that is immeasurable. My question is to the text. The question is, where is this happiness? The speaker in the poem, forget about the poet now. The speaker in the poem begins the journey into the nature, from the culture into the nature, with this sense of loss, that he is not happy, she is not happy in the cultural world, so that she or he would find happiness in natural world. Is there any guarantee that the speaker has finally uh, got the happiness? Probably not. It is only through the conscious and memorizing experience, that the speaker in the poem is able to imagine that he can be happy or she can be happy. So this idea that happiness is absent throughout, while the entire poem reverberates with images which are full of happiness, mirth and pleasure and happiness and ecstasy and whatnot. But you shall see the entire flow of the poem uh, resists the poem from expressing what the speaker would like to experience. This is where critical thinking works. This is, say, for example, My Love is Like a Red Rose by Robert Burns. Now you shall see that this poem is about love, but the beloved is absent. The voice is silenced. She doesn't speak, only he speaks. So it is more of a patriarchal expression, more of a very stereotypical kind of expression. However, this glorified love is not supported, subsisted, or consented by the beloved. The voice of the beloved is not there, probably means that the voice is silenced. This could be understood this way also. This is how we can go
Yes.
on raising questions, raise
Yeah, yeah,
questions to the text. That would probably help you or
yeah.
me to
So,
understand.
so one provokes the students to interpret things in a different way, in a topsy-turvy way, so that they come to know the other side of the interpretation also, or rather they have multiple interpretations, and then from that set of interpretation they can choose and then analyze in their own right. Yeah, that's very nice, sir. That's a very kind of
Yeah.
elucidating kind of explanation that you have provided. Thank you very much. Yeah. So, Mrunmay, do we have any more questions, or can we move on to towards the
No, I'm
Ma'am, we
very
conclusion?
can
happy.
move.
Students
Yeah.
came out
Oh,
with questions.
uh-huh.
And that shows
Uh-huh.
that you have continuous intellectual interactions with students. These days,
Yes.
this is a very rare scene to find. Students
It
come out
is
with
rare
something.
seen, and I also find that students and teachers, they are probably gradually losing that capacity of reflecting over something for a longer period of time, and that's a,
Exactly.
I mean, a real problem right now. Yeah.
Very true.
Yes. Okay, so may I invite now our MA Part 1 student, Avishkar, to offer a vote of thanks. Avishkar, would you please switch on your mic and camera? Yeah, okay, there he is.
Hello.
Please go on. Yeah.
First of all, I would like to organize my inner chaos of thoughts to express my profound
Great.
gratitude for the intellectually stimulating session on the new developments in critical theories by Dr. Anand Kulkarni, sir. Sir, your erudition and scholarly discourse have enriched our understanding and igniting a fervor for deeper exploration. And as we traverse the intricate landscapes of thought, your guidance remains as indelible beacon for us. I would also like to thank our principal, Dr. Maheshwari Gavit. I would also like to thank Dr. Madhuri Dikshit for arranging this series of sessions for us. I would also like to thank English department teachers and students and all the viewing people audience. Thank you. And again, I would like to thank Dr. Anand Kulkarni sir. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, for the nuances that shape our learning. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So
So nice of
there
you.
would be a last request from our side, from the side of the department, that we would like to see you in our department physically someday, and then having a conversation with all of us. We will very
Sure.
much look forward to that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you,
We shall
sir.
definitely. Thank you. Thanks to all
Yeah.
of you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mumbai, let's end this lecture series now. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you, sir. Bye, bye, viewers, and thank you for attending the lecture.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.